and welcome to this next episode on my lies about grief. And today I'm going to be looking at the idea that no one else knows how you feel. And this is the basis for a lot of stuff that happens to you when you share how you feel with someone. And when I mean by that stuff, what I mean is the internal thing that happens to a lot of people when they share something and the person that they're sharing with says, "Oh, yeah, I know exactly how you feel. Same thing happened to me." And then they tell you their story, which is actually not similar to yours, and it's not the same person that they're talking about. And actually, then they go off on a tangent about themselves. And so what happens to you after you've done that is this kind of, ugh, and it's a shutdown again. As you've tried to talk in a really healthy way, you then shut down. And it's just a quick fire natural response where internally you kind of will just switch off almost. And it's just a horrible place to go to, where you know that you've kept trying to talk about how you feel, and either you get the "I know how you feel, I've also had a breakup," or "my partner cheated on me," or "my grand died," or "my mum died," or whatever the loss is or heartbreak that that person is sharing their story about. They'll then go on to talk about their story. So what happened there is your story now gets stops. Both you stop speaking about your story, sorry, and then they tell you their story. But even though there might be a few similarities, they're not going to be the same story, because your story and your loss is your own individual circumstance, and the other person and their loss, it's their individual circumstance. And no two relationships are ever the same. So all of the ins and outs and problems and troubles and love that you had in each relationship won't be the same as what that person has. So you cannot say that you know how you feel. And by doing so, it almost cuts the other person off, or it cuts you off if you've said that, had that said to you rather. And so it stops you from talking, and then we do a shutdown, and then that starts to get really dangerous in a way, because when you keep swallowing that stuff, it's not going to be good for your emotional state, your mental well-being, your physical body. All of our emotions get trapped there. Our body stores our emotions, and so the more that you swallow your story and your feelings and the ability to just share and be heard, because basically when someone says to you, "Oh, I know how you feel," and then they talk about them, what they've done is basically stop hearing you. So you weren't being heard. You might have had someone's attention for a very, very limited amount of time, but then what happened was they made it about them. Now, I'm not saying that everybody that does that does it intentionally. It's become a sort of a norm in grief and loss. Everyone that I see, this has happened to them. They can really relate to this on some level. I've had it said to me in my past, and they were very painful moments, because I knew that the person that was saying, or the people that have said it over different times, they didn't know how I felt. They had no idea, because my individual life and my individual circumstances are so different to the person that was then giving me their story. And quite often, this will then lead to the idea of groups, which are great support for a lot of people. But what can happen in groups? I'll give you one example. So, say you go to a weekly widowed group, or a group for widows, or a group for people that have got a particular bereavement, and you go along. So let's just say for sake now that it's bereavement around widows. So say you've lost your husband or your wife, you go along, you find a local support group, you go to the group. What happens within that group quite quickly is, with a few meetings in, a few weeks in, you might realize that there's a lot of segregations in the group, because people in the group will then be kind of saying, "Oh, well, you're younger, we're older. you can meet someone else. It's all right for you. You can meet someone else. So we can't, because we're old. We can't do that. Our lives, we don't want to do that anymore. So there can be this hierarchy even within the support groups that you go, where you just want to talk about how you feel. So it might be, well, I know how you feel, because you might think that you're going along to a group where people might understand you and you might get some support. But other people within that group, and this is what I've heard, I'm not saying all groups, by the way, but this can happen quite regularly for people, is that there's this instant thing about comparison, which I spoke about in yesterday's video, where people go, so if your loss isn't as bad as my loss. I lost my husband and my child. You only lost your husband, or I lost my wife, and then I lost my mum and my sister. Or there can be this comparison of absolute, horror. And it's almost like, well, who's justified to have their grief more than the other person? Well, I am, because I didn't just lose this, I lost that and that and that. And there's this insipid, horrible sort of hierarchy that can happen, as well as the one that I just said, where it'll be this, well, you can still meet someone, you're still beautiful, I'm old, and I can, all of that stuff. And so we get it in our support groups. Sometimes we can get it from friends, we can get it from well-meaning family. It's very hard to just find a space where you can just kind of offload and really just be yourself, and to share your loss without having anyone stop listening or advising you, fixing you, telling you what to do, telling you what not to do. And just basically, being that person that's not there for you in a empathetic, heartfelt space of just going, God, so sorry you're going through that right now. Gosh, what happened? And giving you the space to just talk. It doesn't mean that you then have to listen to someone for hours and hours and hours, by the way. I think there's this fear as well from people that, oh my gosh, if I ask and then I can't get away because they might want to talk. It doesn't happen. If you give people the space to talk, people don't generally take advantage of that. And you can always, very politely stop conversations if you need to, and give people a limited amount of time to listen, but at least listen when you do listen, or be heard if you need that. And sometimes it's also really helpful to say to people what you need. So I might teach clients, listen, if you want people to listen to you, you need to instruct a lot of people on how to listen. And I know that might sound really basic, but it's really needed, because people just automatically do this set of lies that I've been speaking about over the past 8 days. And they just do it automatically. But if you can say to someone, listen, we really need to talk right now. Can you just listen for 5 minutes? Or have you got 10 minutes for me just to vent? And if they go yes, if they have, and you're lucky enough that someone will give that time to you, then you can say, great, would you mind would you mind not saying anything to me unless I ask you to? Would you mind just listening to me, and not giving me any advice? And people always, without fail, go, yeah, of course I can. Because for the person that's listening, all they want to do is help. They think that they're helping by fixing and advising. They don't know that helping is just that, being there for you. And so a lot of people will be really relieved by your ability to just go, can you just listen and not advise me? That's all I need right now. Maybe I'll come back for you for some advice at some other time, but right now I don't need that. And people will be like, oh, great, yeah, of course. What's up? And so it's about those healthy conversations. It's about putting those boundaries in place for you, and finding the right people to do that with, by the way, because it's not always the people that you presume are the ones that you're going to talk to, are the good ones to talk to. So you might know by now who the safe people are in your life. Who are those people that keep your confidence and that don't repeat stories back to you, don't judge you, and you don't feel judged by, and that you can talk to about anything. Those are what I mean by safety. Those are the ones that you can also say to them, can I just talk to you? Can you just listen? and maybe, you know, don't give me any advice, and I'll ask you if, you know, you'd be the first person I'd ask if I wanted it. So yeah, just some useful tips there as well at the end, because some people find that really helpful, just to be able to know what the heck to do. Because obviously I've given you a list of the things that are unhelpful, and it's like, what do I do instead? So that's a good start. All right, thanks for watching. I hope this has been useful to you. I appreciate your comments if you do make them. Obviously, a lot of you send me private messages as well, and they're all greatly appreciated. Please reach out if I can help in any way as well, and I'll speak to you tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your day.